specifically get concerned about that what are we expected to showcase to our future stakeholders. Now, sometimes these stakeholders could be angel investors, it could be venture capitalists, or it could be known sources from which we are trying to raise funds. So to do that, there are three levels that we talk about. The first level that we talk about is the point of view. If you may recall, last time we covered a topic called point of view. What is my team's point of view on several aspects of start? For example, the problem that we have identified. Now, what does point of view mean from the team perspective is that is the team aligned on some of the key aspects of startup? And this is important for the founders to do, because sometimes we realize that what we feel and what our team feels is completely different. And this exercise is not a one-time exercise. I would request all of us to keep an eye on this and do it every week with our team for at least the first 3 months, because we will be getting a lot of game-changing ideas from people who are front-ending the customers, or customer facing or client facing. So what it means is, let's say, point of view of us related to the problem statement and the customer's job to be done, their pain and gain. What are their point of view? Same way, what is the team's point of view about the solution we have, which means our offering vis-a-vis what they hear from the market. Now, when I say point of view of all team members, it may be the front-ending team that's client-facing. It could be the internal-facing team. Sometimes it happens that the disconnect between the client-facing and the research and development team that is creates a gap, and too many things remain with the founding members. So once we are developing a team, it is therefore a point of view too, which is related to our product or service or solution, which talks about that what are we offering to our clients. The third point of view would be resulting into the business model. And as we discussed, there is no one single business model in a business, depending on who we are serving. Suppose we are a platform, then we have two already stakeholders for whom we'll have to create a business model. One, like for in case of an Uber, one is the driver side business model, one is the client side, customer side business model. But having said that, if the product or a service caters to different customer segments, we may be required to have a business model for those segments. Because for one segment, now why are we doing all this? And that's the session today. The purpose is that a startup does not really know that which segment will click. It may be, yes, we have made our assumption and we are going with those assumptions. However, the market may respond differently. So if the market is responding differently, then whom should be the customer in a pre-launch stage? Who could be our customer segment in the launch stage? And who could be our customer segments when we scale up our activities? Now, let's look at other factor. Some of the startups will feel that we need to raise fund right away. Some of us will feel, I don't need fund, I need resource. Can someone give me the network in a country where I can straight away percolate my product? I just don't need any money for it. Just give me the network, I'll do the job. Somebody may say, I need a partnership with an institution or an organization that can at least get me clearances which are necessary for my growth. So some statutory necessary compliances which some organization may have, if they can give us their know-how or their name, it helps us in going. Like for example, if Niti Ayog backs any of the venture, then it says that we are backed by Atal Tinkering Lab and we have these kind of people that are with us. So the resource could be different. So what we just discussed is point of view from problems perspective, point of view from solution perspective, and now saying what business models we create. So don't please create one business model. We need to create as many business models as we think based on customer segment that we are going to serve right now, customer segment in future, customers. And so suppose you have three customer segments lined out, let's create a business model for each one. And we will notice that the business model will be drastically different when we look at the customer segment. At the same time, the proposition that we want to present to our clients, for example, we want to raise funds, our proposition is different. We want to get a bigger market and resource, our proposition is different. We want to partner with someone, proposition is different. So each of us should now therefore think about that what do I need from an investor? Many a times we just say my expectation is $1 million, but that's not correct. We may not want to raise 1 million. We may be required to raise only a few $1,000 to get ourselves off, but we may need a bigger network, bigger resource from our partners. For example, if there is a big chain of school and we can partner with them, it may give us roadways. If we talk about CBSC and we are able to partner with CBSC, it gives us a network to be there. Then we may feel that, oh, I don't need too much fund in that regard. So in that context, let us look at business model and the propositions that we are trying to aim. All of this, friends, sometimes is misunderstood, and therefore we think that the prototype is only about our core solution. No, prototype is not just the core solution. Prototype is also the business that we are getting in. So the misunderstanding here should be cleared through the model that I want to suggest to all of us. I'll just share the screen. We're talking at prototyping at 3 levels. Rather, I would say 4 levels. Idea to paper. So you suppose you are meeting someone in a restaurant. Can you quickly draw your idea on the back of the napkin? It is therefore something called a back of napkin drawing. We don't need to talk too much to our friends. We want to show them what we have on back of a napkin. That's one. Second, once we have done that, let us take that drawing to a model and a concept. So which means that now we are talking a little more serious about what would be the model that I can create or a concept I can create. And the third level we are going to look at is from that, can we create a business out of it? So now let's explore each one. And my request would be that let's do a quick 5-minute exercise for each one. I'll show you various examples, and those examples can convert into quick ideas that come right now. So don't wait for future. Prototyping is not spending days and months, and because we are in a pre-MVP stage. If we were in a post-MVP stage, then the prototyping would have a very different meaning. There, the purpose of prototyping would also mean that if I want to create my product for one customer, or if I want to create for 1,000 customers, what would be the manufacturing change that I will have to bring about? For one customer, I can go 3D printing, but for 1,000 customers, I may want to create a proper business model which is based on the manufacturing capabilities. So in the pre-MVP stage, let's begin with the first one. Let's begin with idea to paper. And of course, I'm not covering these basic topics which you will have in the slide, that why we prototype. But for all the reasons, there are top 3 reasons that I would suggest we look at. One, internal customer. For a founder to give a speech and get people on board is not possible on a daily basis. So can we create a prototype of the same? Now it could be a video that we create. It could be a poster that we create. It could be a small handout that we may create. But for internal customers to be with us, like whoever is joining is that person getting what we do. That's first. Why we prototype is we want our internal team to know the things. The second, of course, is we want the external team to know. So other stakeholders to know about it. And third is that while we prototype, we will know the challenges that we will encounter. Now, most of us have already created a product, so you have actually overcome the same. But when we talk from the funding perspective, when we talk from perspective of a venture capitalist wanting to look at things, it requires us to explain the things in a crisp manner within a few minutes. Therefore, it may be wise to put our idea on paper in a quick manner. So I would say these are the three reasons. Rest all, as you can see on the screen, is the reasons why we prototype. Uh, Now, this is another concept which is important, and I would wish that some of us should actually practice this. While we are prototyping, we have moved from customer research to deep customer research to customers as part of creation process. What Swarup bhai was mentioning right now is a client asking us that what happens to this, and if we get that answer, can we work with the customers to say that let's jointly co-create the answer. So Prem for you, little more interesting topic here, since I know your startup, and of course, Saurabh bhai, can we create a prototype that is half cooked and give it to our customer saying, can you work this out and finish it for me? And can we create a pool of these 3 to 5 customers who we feel are deeply interested in my solution? Now they may not be paid, they may not have to pay us for their use of the product, but they become our ambassadors. And it's another way of saying that let's make them part of our solution process. So prototyping with our end customers as part of the development exercise. But while we do that, there is a misconception. But the one misconception is when we prototype, we are asking them that what's working and what's not working and those things. What I'm saying is we ourselves remove some components which are interesting and give them half cooked and then tell them that if you were to finish this with me, what would you do? Now, what it does is that sometimes it brings game changing answers. So let's not look at prototyping from a perspective that we are only testing out our things. Let us also go into some of the areas that we feel are gray areas, make it half cooked and bring the customer in. Now, what are gray areas we'll need to think about in our product and service? So that's the first exercise let's do today. What are the top 3 gray areas? And right now, we're not talking about business. We are only talking about the core solution we have, which is our product or a service. What are the top 3 gray areas that we are concerned with? Business will come later. No, so somebody may say the gray area is the how do I approach a principal? No, we hold that. That's a business side of it. Right now, the side that we are talking about is my product going out to a customer or service. What are the 3 things that I'm really not very sure yet? So let's quickly do a 3-minute drill and identify 3 things that today you feel are a challenge in our product or a service in terms of a gray area. The moment we do that, what we will do is we will make that part of our product half cooked and say, this part I'm working. Can you help me in developing this further? So Prem, it could be the learning experience. It could be the kit which is half made, and we give them. You would be surprised. Few years back, I was doing this, and I realized that I had given a project to some of the children because it was a children activity, and I gave them half cooked. What happened is that they finished it with waste material, and the moment they finished with the waste material, it opened a new area of sustainable material and sustainable practices, resulting into a new kind of a product service development. So sometime game changing, and it brought the cost down from 250 rupees per child to 15 rupees because the waste material, and it became a big hit among the parents because they said, I'll give you that example. You may find it funny and interesting. Now, what we did is that we said you have to communicate a story uh, through the material I'm giving. It's very similar to communicating a story through the robot kit I'm giving. No, it's very similar. But here I said, I want you to create a story by the things I'm giving you. So I removed those things from there and said, use a waste material and communicate that story to me. So the interesting things that started happening is we opened an imagination door for the people that now somebody said, I don't want to use a robot. I'll go to nature and I will bring those things from nature. And so it brought close a very new field of human and machine together. And the others who were very tech savvy said, okay, I'll go into IoT based solutions. Somebody said, I want to go into specific of chemical reactions that can create this story. So, I mean, when I say story, I don't misunderstand, please don't misunderstand it as a language story. We're talking about the solution that we are trying to create. Now, that opened a whole door and said that we bring the cost down by 250 rupees to just 15 rupees, and even sometimes saying that you explore and bring back material and then you create your story. I hope some of you must be finding this exciting, because the moment that happens, the client will be giving us answers and a new model may emerge. So let's take, I hope we have 3 minutes. I kept the story on for the benefit of others, but in that context, if I look at the three challenges that you wanted to share with me, uh, let's look at the three gray areas and what will be the kind of half-cooked product that you may want to give to to the customers today itself. Let's quickly do that exercise.
Yeah, can I just share one? Like normally, what happens is when we talk about robotic kits, we send the robot chassis, the wheels, and the servo motors, and all these things. The entire it's almost like we get the students to assemble the things before they uh, program. But here, what I'm coming up with is that you use anything you want. It could be any material. Basically, it can even be just a discarded hardbound notebook. Just remove that and make it the chassis. Stick it with no need for bolts and stick it with a glue gun, and and build your own this one. This leads to what happens is so students in a way they start doing it. Uh, there is a it throws open a huge amount of divergent thinking, in which the students are able to there's a lot of some crosstalk, I think.
Perfect. I think that's a good example of what we were discussing.
Yeah.
So now let us do one thing. I hope you have identified three gray areas that you want to test out. Of course, don't worry
Yes.
if some of the gray areas on the business side, don't worry. Just list it down. We will take it up later.
Yeah, there are.
Excellent. And now for those gray areas, what would be the half-cooked service that we want to dish out today itself? Let's think about what can be that, and how do you do that? Is look at the product value chain. If a product is being used by a client in stepwise manner, that's the value chain. How can I take one of the value chains and see this is the gray area and I make that half cooked? That's just to share how we should approach this entire thing. Let's take a minute to think and see that can we identify some of the value chain areas which we can make half cooked, which are complete right now. But let's see that if we just remove one or two pieces from there, what would be the answer that a client will get when we pass that on challenge to that client? Yeah, open source, correct. That's how open source is completely built like that. But how do we use that concept of open source in our solution while we are prototyping? So we are in a prototyping stage today. Sometimes that's why I said that prototyping should not be misunderstood in that context. So here we are using a very unique thing for creating variants of our products based on the needs of our customers. Yeah, let's take a minute or two and see that what answers emerge. I hope our friends are working on it. If anyone is ready, just please share so that it's for the benefit of everyone else, that we could arrive at some of the three gray areas, and part of my product looks that piece that is related to that gray area, which I may make it half booked, which I may remove or change it and give it to my customers. They get back to me with it. Yeah, Swarup, are you ready? Then you can please share. So benefit of others. Let's hear.
Okay. So, so some of the while technology part of it was streamlined, but talking to some of these guys, and even I was trying to talk to a colleague, which we are trying to get as a as a team member, right? So we had a very interesting discussion this weekend. Sorry, the beginning of the week, and these are some of the questions which came up from that discussion also. So first was, you can issue digital certificates, which is great, but how do you actually link the physical certificate to the digital one? And this suddenly struck me that yes, it is true. I mean, we are used to handing out, and there is a feel to it that you receive something at a convocation, but I take the entire process digital. So I've taken that good factor of that achievement, sense of achievement out. So how do we still do that? And that's a very interesting question from a psychology perspective, which I still have to work, and is something which will come up for discussions with potential customers. The second question which came is, once you issue them, where does it go? Right? I mean, where is it in the entire internet world? www, where are those certificates located? How can users see it? How can we access it? Right? And of course, the third one which I mentioned is tomorrow, if our application is down or ceases to exist, what happens to all the data and the certifications? So the very three pertinent questions. The rest were a little bit technical, but I think these three are top of the list for us for now. Yeah.
Excellent. So let's say the last piece, we go back to our customers and remove some parts. So let's say, in your case, if it's certification, what we are saying is, let's remove the certification part and say you have finished the program. Now what do we do? So let the client come back and tell us what do we do. So we and certification could be one. Now this is very vague when you talk to them. If you want to be a little specific, we can say the course is over. Here are your grades, and here is the appreciation for what you have done, and fill the other three that you think that you need from me now. Now they will give us very many directions. Or let's say that certifications we want to keep, and then we say, oh, I'm giving you a certificate, but tell me where are you going to use this certificate in the next 6 months? So automatically the client is telling us those things. Now comes an interesting part. We tell them that, would you want to take this certificate to that client and prove it that this certificate is worth the knowledge I have? Otherwise, our clients will tell us that, please, you send my certificate to Infosys and let Infosys then call me. Now that's what becomes another big task for us, to tie up with these organizations or use the intermediaries to get to them. But how can the whole game be reversed, saying when you are applying, you tell them this is the certification you have, but please back it by a few interesting things that you can say that's the value of my certificate. So the client builds the value of my certificate rather than us going out to build. So you may put that as a half-cooked piece. I hope our other friends are in sync. What it means by creating a half-cooked piece is this, what I was just explaining. Karan, do you want to share something?
I think it's quite self-explanatory, and it completely varies from startup to startup, the kind of product, and it's interesting to, I think we can ask the others also to
Yes,
share their initial perspectives and what is their first level thought on that.
absolutely. So what, friends, Sarabhi has shared his view. What would you want to, as we discuss, what would be your perspective on it?
I just have one more
Sure.
this one to share. See, one of the things that I got recently when I was interacting with the principal of a college who is also a physics teacher is uh, are you is the physical computing and the Python part of your course is that aligned with the CBSE and NCERT syllabus for Python. CBSE and NCERT have recently introduced, and it's actually, I would say that it's more aligned with the Atal tinkering than with the Python course. But drawing from that question and also some information about what he gave me about how they tinker in the school, which is actually very amateurish they're doing. I suggested that we can actually completely teach Python whatever they're doing in the classroom and which they need to do as part of their NCERT curriculum, and align it completely with the making curriculum. So, which means that we are actually bringing the theoretical part of the lessons prescribed by the NCERT with the Atal tinkering, which is an open structured curriculum, like or rather unstructured curriculum that Atal tinkering allows. So we can align the two. So what they learn in Python as part of the CBSE, they can also come out and use it in the Atal tinkering labs, where those synergies, to the extent that I know, they don't exist much. One of the reasons why some of the best efforts with Atal is losing out. So
that's perfect. So let's take Prembhai's example, and what I would like to put it here is that if we make our product half cooked in terms of what do I give in terms of Python, and go to a teacher and say that how, when I'm giving this, would you connect this with your class? So if there is a physics teacher or there is a chemistry teacher, they tell us that how are they going to connect this piece of half-cooked Python subject to the learning of the class. Now we have a buyback, because those teachers will push the school saying that if this happens, my subject connect with the other aspect of learning in the academic learning goes to the next level. This is what I meant. So it is again not the user sometimes, it can be a stakeholder that is in perspective. In this case, we said the user could be a child, but a stakeholder being a teacher is giving us a feedback which says, how can I connect it with another subject and get the value out of my program enhanced? Excellent, Prembhai. Thanks for sharing. Let's hear Swarup. He is asking something.
Sir, just to add on that same comment and from the previous observation that you made, so I'm trying to put these two things together. So when you said that, how the scoring, the teacher will assign some scores or grades, and then a certificate shall be issued at some point of time. So the interesting question comes here is, which I can pose to them is, so who is in charge of the final issuing of the certificate? Is the teacher, and then there is a registrar of someone in the organization who is issuing it? So is it a two-step process? Is it a one-step process? And then kind of how do we align it so the certificate gets issued? And I think putting all these two observations together, I think that becomes a very good question to open up and ask them. Yeah.
Excellent point there, Swarup bhai. I think that is what we need to do here in prototype. So let's come back to the class. Since we have a shorter class today, now let me take us all through to this specific aspect of what we were discussing. That's the first thing, that prototyping is also has a meaning in this aspect. Now let's look into, when I share with you, these are some of the links that you can see to will give us some insights in what we are discussing. But moving ahead, let me just quickly take you through idea to paper. Some of the key aspects of idea to paper are here. As you can see on the screen, there can be various ways in which we can prototype things to explain to our investors, to explain to our internal customers, to explain to our external customers. We could use any of these that are mentioned here, and there is a whole list, as you can see. And most of them, if we look at it, metaphor, we could explain our entire concept using a metaphor. Like a few days back, somebody was talking about a certain kind of food. They took an example from a place in one of the places in the world and said that kind of a culture is what we want to show in our food business. The culture was they were talking about, but the culture they straight away, like we give references that my service would be of a kind which is something like this. So metaphorically explaining and connecting our things into some aspects. Of course, illustrations are the common, videos and interactive building blocks are some of them. Now let's look at some of the things. We are talking about the leftmost, just a sketch, not too much of it. Then when we look at the functional, we add certain things to it. And the right is, of course, the ready product. So conceptually, just explaining these three together. Again, you'll have some reference to go through, but I'll put this interesting thing out in terms of idea to paper so that it may help. Okay, let's begin then.
Paper prototypes are a fast and cheap way to test ideas for products and services. As such, they are an integral part of the design thinking methodology. By showing paper prototypes in user interviews, you can get a better understanding of user needs and also use it as a basis to experiment on, during and after the interview. To start off, let's talk about commonly used materials. These include a pair of scissors,
so I'll skip this
tape,
part.
service. If, for example, you want to visualize an app or a website, you can start by drawing a simple interface. It doesn't matter if it looks crude. I actually recommend it, because that way users are encouraged to talk honestly about the concept itself. In contrast, a highly polished prototype draws the attention to details like button placement and color choice. People also tend to hold back their honest opinion because they do not want to devalue your fancy prototype.
So what we learn from here is that sometimes we aim to create as finished a prototype as possible. But what this gentleman is saying is that by doing that, people don't give us the true opinion. So can we, which is what we were discussing a minute back, can we give half-cooked or half-done things and encourage the people to talk about their opinions for the same? Let's move on.
Obviously put so much work into. The same goes for physical objects like wearables. This technique is called wireframing and allows users to get a feel of your idea. Having a physical representation of the device helps to understand the implications of wearing it. Would I take it to work? Or wear it when doing sports? Services, on the other hand, are a different story since they are intangible. So try to pick out a part of the service experience you want to focus on. Let's say you want to host a convention for dog owners. One prototype could be a written invitation, another a program overview. Use these as a starting point in interviews. Here I am building a dog food shipping package. I can use it not only to test its content or size, but also the unpacking experience and whether the instructions are clear enough. To sum it up, while paper prototypes lack the functionality and detail of a traditional prototype, they are great for evaluating early concepts from a user perspective. They can be created and adapted very quickly, and in case users don't like them, simply discard them. That was my short overview.
Okay, so let's move on, friends,
Paper
to see what can be idea to paper. Various parts of our solutions can also be showcased in this manner, as we can see. Now, only thing we need to do is pick up the value chain for each one of our idea solution and think that how can I represent the same into quick idea to paper. Yeah, Swarup has something to ask, please. So here is an example of idea to paper. And several of this could be used in conjunction for our solution. So please do not misunderstand that I create one back of the napkin drawing. Now, why am I saying so? Many a times I see that the core concept being explained is by one visual, but our solution is not just one piece. It is a string of pieces that we put together as value, and each of them can actually be described. So many a times you must have noticed that we show something and then we have to explain the other part in more detail. Here what we are saying is we just not showcase what's the first part. Can we create those values by different kind of, we also call them graphic organizers, but different kind of diagrams and methods there. Taking it further, it could mean something like this. It could mean something like this. It could also mean something like this in terms of a flow showing here. There was a startup working on one of the banks in order to make the entire experience more enriching. So as we see here, it could also be a flow chart. It could also be a process map or things as we can see. Just a quick idea to paper to explain things. That's another some examples further. So that was the first part that we wanted to cover. Now, since we are short of time today, we have roughly about 14 minutes. Um, how many of us have this idea or to paper or a back of napkin drawing ready for an investor? Let's not get into business model canvas, but let's get my core idea and thought quickly across to people saying, here is something that I want to show you. Prem Bhai has that video that he generally shares when he wishes to share. But is that video a one piece, or do we want to create a string of pieces as your service?
String of pieces.
Exactly. So can a mind map be a good example of showcasing to someone in one glance that this is what my business solution looks like? We're not talking yet about the business. We are still talking the core solution. So let's quickly create something. I'm sure when you sit to create this, a lot of interesting thoughts will cross our mind, because prototyping is also used to generate ideas. So while we do this iteration of idea to paper, a lot of interesting things will emerge when we look at our solution into these pieces. Let me move on. I mean, because of paucity of time, and I think Karan Bhai would be equally anxious. Today's session is more like a T, not even T20. So it's a T2 kind of thing, the speed at which and the concept that I'm sharing. Uh, we move on to paper. We have done now idea to paper. Now that thing that we have done to explain to people what we have explained on paper, just one word of how do you check whether it is what is desired or not. Um, if you have to verbally explain your product or service still, then it's still not the whole concept idea to paper. What idea to paper is says is people should see and themselves make it out what this is. That's the challenge. If we feel that after showing I have to explain something, then it is the gap is still there. So what we are saying is you give your service to someone that page, and we just stand back and he says, oh, I have understood this, I have this question. That's when we feel that our idea to paper is done well. Moving on, paper to model. These are all, of course, classic examples of paper to model. I mean, I don't need to explain these. We have done, all of us have done explaining things into a model format very quickly. The crude models, as we can see, as rough as possible for quick discussions, range of the gamification of one of the uh, one of the products that was gamification in terms of HR. And so education, but HR practices and gamifying the entire thing. Somebody created a game like that. Again, somebody working on a prototype from paper to a model. Of course, these are classic examples of organizations using miniature prototypes in terms of model. I'll skip this part and come back. We could use 3D printing for the same and various other now methods. We also AR, VR could also be used as a method to showcase closest to reality simulation of our product. We're not talking about our product improvement, we're talking prototyping. The experience is equally important. How do we prototype that experience for our clients while they use the product or service that we are offering? Okay, now quickly I'll take this and then we'll have a discussion once again. Once we have done idea to paper, then we have moved from paper to a model. We're also saying that sometimes we need to back up that model with a concept, or we'll need not have the model. Some of the businesses don't require a model, they require more of concept. So all that we see on the screen is concept, from idea to paper, paper to a model, and or a concept. So all this that we see, so something that we want to showcase to our clients as a back end can also be how the data will be stored, how the data will be secure, can be shown by a back-end system also. And so all these examples that we see are explaining the concept to people. Yeah. So we're talking of, sometimes we also use pre and post. The pre is the situation, post is going to be like this. Therefore, my solution is giving this aspects, which is also shown as a concept. Again, examples of concepts for clients for different kind of applications. Again, the concept being shared. Again, the concept here. Yeah, a concept of different things being put together. Here is a concept of one of the businesses that wanted to transform itself from a retail experience to a lounge-based experience in fashion. So that's what, for this startup, that's what it is. Yeah, that's what they created, and then what they brought in are things. So many of us would use the future technologies in order to create things. Like some of us may use 3D printing to create things right in the classroom, which brings in new learning. Or we may use augmented and virtual reality to create some experience which we are not able to give in the class, or not able to give to our end users, but that piece may be somewhere else creation, somebody else creation, but we could use it in our product or service to complete the experience. Okay, moving on. Again, examples, classic examples of concept, explaining the concept. Okay, UI UX, many of us would be wanting to take that up. So Figma and Adobe XD and all those can be used. There are now apps to create apps. It will take us just half a day to get our prototype out. Again, examples there, concept. All of these are examples of several concepts. So we said idea to paper, paper to model, and or a concept. This startup was trying to work on reducing the loan time from 3 weeks to 3 days. So they worked on several aspects and created these as concepts. Where are all the bottlenecks and how can we remove the same? Let's stop for a minute. Though we are very short, it's just about 7 minutes, but let's stop for a minute and have question answers on idea to paper we did and discussed. Now paper to a model and a concept. Are there some kind of questions that you may want to pose here? Okay, if we are good to go, then let me take up the next one and let's move on. We may have questions. Okay, so saying now we go to the business. Now, how do we go to business? Your lean canvas is a good example to showcase to someone. So creating multiple lean canvases, creating multiple business canvases, as you recall when we began. And my suggestion is all of us should at least create 5 different business canvases for different stakeholder perspective. And then put all those business canvases on a wall and just stand back and look at that. What is it telling us? Many a times we will realize that the answers we are getting by the cross things, like some here, a partner may be somebody else from that stakeholder perspective, but a partner on the other stakeholder could be somebody else. And when we look at a bigger picture and synthesizes, we may get an opinion on what kind of an organizations would fulfill these specific roles. From that emerges the business model that we want to propel. Okay, having said that, this is something that we would also want to do. Stepwise implementation plan. Now, what does that mean? Is that all of us should think about a pre-launch, launch, and a post-launch. When I say post-launch, it's a little bit of scaling at level 1. But pre-launch definitely tells us that with a business model, what will be my implementation plan? With another business model, what would be the next implementation plan that we should have? And it may be wise to break that into a Gantt chart, as you can see on the right top, as well as it may be broken down into several aspects which are very important, like cost implications and the resources needed, could form the uh, outcomes of the business canvas. But what we are saying is for each business canvas, we create this kind of a plan. And as I said before, can it overlap? Now I'm going to just show you a quick idea to paper, paper to a concept here. Concept again taken further into refining, so creating of all this. And this is all done at an elementary level, which is all open source. Now also showcasing to our clients not just the front end but what happens at the back end, like Swarup was mentioning about what happens to the data. Now somebody saying this is how I'm storing your data, this is the protection that you have, this is where it will be, can be connected to the DigiLocker, can be connected to other sources, are the challenges. But the back end for how the things work and how decisions will be made is sometimes also interesting for people to know. And of course, the creation of outcomes, like for example, what kind of an advertisement do I want to put out? What kind of a message do I want to put out? What kind of posters I want to send? All those also become part of the same. Similarly, idea to here, idea to paper, models, and the concept, and then the business out of it, the cost benefit analysis for the same. Okay, so that's for the session today. We'll just hold it. I mean, it's just a couple of minutes left. Let's have a quick round of question answers on idea to paper, paper to model, concept, and then concept to a business, creating different business models based on the customers or stakeholders, putting it all up on the wall and standing back and seeing each aspect of the business model, creating an outcome for the same pre-launch, launch, and post-launch. The resources we may need may be very different. Somebody may say in a pre-launch stage, I just need to do a pilot and my resource requirement may be a couple of lakh of rupees, but I need a resource, which is a channel. Can you give me the channel in which I can put this? And when we reach the launch stage, we may say, I want to test it out with three different regions with three different kind of customer segments to get my answers and hypothesis tested for how that customer will behave in that situation. And then we look at the next step, that in the post-launch, we say we are happy with our first 50 responses, but what about 500? What about 5,000? How does that change my business model? If I just change those numbers of customers, will the business model be turned? Most of education startups have a challenge there. The first one is the most difficult, and the 500 one beyond that becomes the next difficult, and then going 5,000 plus becomes the next difficult. I'm just giving hypothetical numbers, but if you keep adding that one couple of zeros, what does that do to the business model? Do the partners change? Do the key resources change? Do the our team members change? Do the kind of cost structures change? Those things are in the post. My suggestion most of the time to pre-incubation stage startups is, let's create a 3-year plan. The 3-year plan could be my pre-launch is the first 3 months or 6 months. Post that, my launch would be about an year. Now, why are we doing all this? We are doing all this to learn. Please don't misunderstand. I'm not saying we are doing this to get business running. All that we are doing is to learn, and to learn, therefore, you may say, I want to get to the easiest market, and you may also say, I want to get to the most difficult market. And therefore, I create a business model for both of them, for two different customer segment or same segment, two markets. How does my business model change? Now, biggest challenge, friends, here is many times, and don't be, I mean, I would only suggest you make a decision. Many a times I'm told, here's a great business model. So I ask them, where is the second and the third one? So many a times we get misled that a business model is a thing. It's not the thing. It is a series of learning experiences that we want to simulate. So let's take business model as a simulation for different scenarios, for different markets, for different customer segments, and then make it and just put it on the wall. I can assure you what you will come back with is quite deserving equity. It has that kind of value when we look at, and then we look at pre-launch, we look at launch, and we look at post-launch. And how would you define that? I would leave it to you. For me, a post-launch could be 500. For you, post-launch could be 50,000. Completely fine. But it is your business model that has to match that aspect. So since we are over time, I hope we are current try to make it a T20 faster than that. But the idea is not that. The idea is three things I wanted to convey. Prototype can be for idea generation with our customers. If we know the weak spots, the value chain in our business, make it half cooked and get opinion, ideas from customers. Second is, if you want to showcase it to different stakeholders, they would have different meanings for from a business. The three meanings can be explained to them the concept clearly in one drawing. So idea to paper. Paper to model, we want to make it little workable for our benefit to understand the clarity. And then paper to a concept or a model is same. And the third one is, we may have great prototypes as a solution, but have we prototyped our business? Is the marketing prototyped, and have we brought innovation in marketing? Have we brought innovation in HR practices? LinkedIn could reach 1 billion with 17 employees. Now that's a fantastic example of HR. But they thought they should go that way. Somebody else may say, I want to go 1,700 people and reach 1 billion. That's completely okay, because they may have those resources sitting in the heart of Silicon Valley. We may be half the globe away, and we may not have those resources. What other resources do I pull in to achieve the same results?